Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I'm allergic to hand sanitizer, alcoholic wipes, generally anything that has alcohol-based products. I even bring my own soap because I can have a reaction to some soaps. I can't even drink the stuff without my lips swelling. My old boss was my cousin, so when COVID hit, I didn't really have a problem until my cousin got promoted and got transferred to a new office. Enter our new boss. We got a mass email going over our new COVID safety procedures, and one of the new procedures is that we all have to use hand sanitizer and antiseptic wipes. I sent an email to HR telling them about my allergies with medical documents. They sent back saying that I don't have to use the hand sanitizer and antiseptic wipes, and that they put it in my file. However, when I sent the exact email to my new boss, he replied saying that all employees have to follow the new COVID safety procedures. No exceptions. When I replied that if I use those products I will need a medical assistant, he then sent me another email saying that if any employee doesn't follow the new COVID safety procedures correctly, that they will be fired. I sent copies of the emails to our union rep and HR department, to which they replied that they would talk to him and kinda told me to ignore him unless he tries to actually fire me. So I go into work and my new boss is literally waiting for me at my desk with a bottle of hand sanitizer in his hands, asking me to hold out my hands. I did reply saying, "No thanks, I would rather not go to hospital today." He got mad and literally grabbed my hand and squirted sanitizer on it, then ran it in. I tried to go to the bathroom to wash it off, but he blocked me. Well, I had a bad reaction. Thank God I had an EpiPen in my desk. My boss kept saying I thought he was lying and kept saying until I was put into the ambulance and couldn't hear him. A member of HR department and a legal department came to visit me in the hospital, probably making sure I don't sue, and they informed me that he was fired. The woman from HR department also said that they called the police on my behalf and I should be getting a visit from them soon. I can't talk about that as it's an ongoing investigation. ATA. I'm in Australia, so no medical fees. I'm not happy about the EpiPen, $40. They are expensive. Also, the cops won't tell me anything about it. They did tell me though that he's been ordered to stay away from me. So he must be out of jail if he was ordered to stay away, right? I'm still in the hospital hoping to be released today or tomorrow. This is such a mess. Many people here commented about what my cousin will probably do in retaliation, and I was naive about it because they were exactly right. I last posted on Reddit about my cousin who gave me a junk beach cruiser bike out of his parents' backyard when my mountain bike got stolen. I cleaned up and fixed up the beach cruiser, and then suddenly my cousin wanted me to either pay him $60 for it or give it back because he wanted to sell it after I made it purdy. But the rest of the family, including his parents, basically told him to grow up when he tried to get them involved. Then he found out about my YT post. One of his friends apparently saw it and told him, either here or on a podcast or something like that. I don't know, but word spread around. The whole family found out because my cousin ranted to them. But none of them are angry with me. They actually sympathized with me for even feeling like I had to make the YT post to begin with when my cousin was so clearly in the wrong. My cousin ended up freaking out over it and confronting me on my way home from work. This time he demanded even more money for the bike. He said that since I love Reddit so much, he was taking an a-hole tax for humiliating him, and that the cost of the bike was now $80. He ranted about how paying him $80 for the bike was the least I could do after I humiliated him. I refused and said that he was acting like a grifter, and the bike was hardly worth anything. I put in effort to make it rideable, while he let it rot in his parents' backyard for years. It was junk when I started, and I made it work. Then I listed all the things I did to fix it, and how much it would have cost a bike shop to fix it instead. He somehow still didn't see my point and still stated he wanted the money now. or he would be taking the bike back whether I liked it or not. I told him I was done with this and tried to ride off, but he grabbed me and pulled both me and the bike over before I could ride away. I said, "What the hell, man," while I was getting up, and then he actually slugged me in the face. It didn't break my nose, but really freaking hurt, and it made me plead. Then he took my bike and rode off with it. I am older than my cousin by 2 years, and taller too, but he's built way sturdier than me since his father is a bit of a husky and strong man, and he inherited that body type, so he had no problem knocking me down and robbing me. Someone came over to help me up, and then I called the cops. Family or no family, I wasn't about to just let him get away with doing that to me. And the altercation happened right in front of a shop with CCTV, which the cops later got video from. I got taken to the hospital to have my face checked, and my cousin was arrested by police at his apartment. He had the bike there too and had even already listed it for sale online, but took it down later. Thanks to something someone commented on my last post, I documented the serial numbers of the bike by photographing them and writing them down at home, so I got my bike back from the police without much issue. My cousin tried to tell the police the bike was still his, but I had text on my phone from back when he said I could have it, and lots of other text evidence of the harassment that followed. Plus, his parents were there when he gave the bike to me, and the whole family knew he tried to grift me. So, he surrendered it and the bike was returned to me at the station. My boss gave me a couple of days off work to recover, and the injury to my nose was thankfully minor, so I am doing fine. My cousin didn't get off easy though. After he was arrested, he was found to have been drinking. So now he's been charged for theft, assault, and underage drinking since he's not 21 yet. He called his parents to come bail him out, but they refused after finding out what he did to me. They came to see me after a couple days and were extremely apologetic. They said they had no idea he'd do such a jerk move to me. They also said he'd been asking for money a lot lately, and likely was spending that all on his habits. None of us have any idea where he got the alcohol or what kind of long-term punishment he's in for, but I doubt he's going to get off very lightly from this when he goes to court. I did get questioned about whether or not I can press charges, but the police already have the video of the assault and theft, and my cousin is still getting charged for underage drinking, so no one is really asking me to try and speak on his behalf. I don't really want to either. And since I waited a few days longer to post this, my cousin is now out of jail, and his parents have learned from him that he was also behind on rent and is now facing eviction since his lease was months to months. He was also fired from his job for being a no-show since he was stuck in jail for a few days. One of my friends works in that same place too, and my cousin had already been on thin ice for bad behavior, a lot of tardiness, and repeatedly not showing up for work. So, getting arrested was the last straw for his boss, and he was fired. So now he's looking at misdemeanor charges, has no job, and is getting evicted. All because he had to be a jerk and a grifter. From what my parents and his parents tell me, he acted like everything was all my fault. But his parents have shot that down and chewed him out over the fact that he had beat me up and stole from me, and that this is practically karma for that. Then they made him promise to leave me alone from here on out. I've heard his parents aren't going to be letting him move back into his old room either. Instead, they plan on putting him up in a loft above their garage, which isn't exactly roomy, has plywood walls, and there is no AC up there for the summer heat. I went back to my routine of riding the bike to and from work, and I haven't been bothered about it anymore by any of my cousin's jerk friends. In fact, they seem to have completely distanced themselves from me and anyone else I know. It's just insane that all this was over a used beach cruiser. It's not even an expensive one. I'd like to ask my cousin one day if it was worth it, but I don't want to see his face again anytime soon. So this happened around 2008. My buddy Brock had gone out of the military after 10 years. He'd started in the Marines but transitioned into the Army for the last 4 years before buying a house in Texas. When he got out, he did a variety of jobs before landing a gig with a repo service. He worked there for a year and had a lot of wild stories, but this one sticks out the most as he helped a fellow soldier get revenge on an evil ex. Brock was at the office speaking with his manager, whom I refer to as Karen. Now, this particular Karen had a lot of Karen-like qualities, but was a force for good, if you can believe that. While they were talking, they saw a young man enter the office. They immediately noticed he had 2 black eyes and an arm was in a sling. The young man, whose name I unfortunately never learned but I will call Ben, asked how hard it would be for them to help repossess his car. Karen called her daughter in, Karen Jr., and had her pour Ben a cup of coffee. Karen then asked Ben to tell her his story. Ben began by telling her that he had just returned from a deployment. He had been dating a local girl that lived outside of the famous Fort Hood. Not a good idea, by the way, before the deployment. Thanks to a previous deployment, he had managed to get himself a used black Dodge Charger, which was his baby. He further explained that shortly after buying the car, he had met a local girl, who, for the sake of the story, I will call Morgan. Morgan was always asking to drive his car, but he would always decline. When he was getting ready for his deployment, Morgan repeatedly asked if she could borrow the car, but he kept saying no. After much needling, he relented, but on the condition that she took care of his apartment until he comes back from rest and relaxation leave. And she agreed. Ben left for his deployment while Morgan took care of his place. When Ben came back from leave, he found his apartment immaculate. He pulled his car from storage, drove to Morgan's, and he spent a few days with her before handing her the keys and heading to his home state to visit family before returning to his deployment. He returned again from his deployment and found nothing but trouble. When he walked onto his apartment, he found a layer of dust on just about every single surface. When he walked into his apartment, he found a layer of dust on just about every single surface. It was almost like no one had been there in months. When he checked his bedroom, he'd found his room had been torn apart. All of his drawers had been searched and upturned. He tried to call Morgan but never received an answer. He located his safe, which was hidden, and found it hadn't been touched. He then grabbed his spare key from the safe, called a buddy of his, and they went to Morgan's. As they pulled up to Morgan's, he saw a car there that he initially didn't recognize, but as he got closer, he realized it was his baby. Morgan had the car painted hot pink and put 24-inch spinners on it. He tried the key just to make sure, and the lights flickered as it unlocked. While his buddy left, Ben went to the front door and Morgan answered. He asked what happened to his car, and she responded, "It's my car now." Ben walked away and hopped in his hot pink mess. As he started it, 4 large dudes came out of Morgan's house. One with a baseball bat, and they yanked Ben out of his car. They proceeded to beat him in a driveway before his friend intervened, pulling his conceal and carry pistol on a group. He then took Ben to the hospital. I am honestly not sure if the cops were called on this. I'd assume yes, but even then, Ben said his friend drove by Morgan's house a handful of times while he was in the hospital at random times and the car was never there. Karen stared at Ben for a bit before asking for the paperwork. Ben handed it to her and Karen had a smile form on her face. She then asked Ben for Morgan's phone number and Ben gave it but wasn't aware of what was about to happen. Karen handed the phone to Karen Jr., who then dialed the number. Karen Jr. then began speaking to Morgan, telling her that they had met at one of the local clubs and wanted to know if she was down to party that night. Apparently Morgan agreed and the plan was set. Brock marked his tow truck at the club and waited. And sure enough, Morgan showed up with a pink monster, parked it, and went inside with some girlfriends. Brock gave them 5 minutes before he stealthily drove up to the car and hooked it up. As he was pulling out with a pink monster, Morgan walked out of the club. He saw her car in a tow truck and began trying to flag Brock down, but he was already out of there. The next day it was business as usual at the office when Morgan called. She was furious that her car was stolen by them and wanted it back. Karen, using her best customer service voice, told her if she had the registration she could come pick it up. Morgan began screaming louder that she was going to call the cops, at which point Karen sarcastically told her please do, then hung up on her. As this phone call was going on, Brock happened to look out the window and saw Morgan standing next to a car in a vacant lot, throwing what appeared to be a temper tantrum. After Karen hung up, Brock watched her get in a car on a passenger side, and Karen then looked out the window and had Brock verify it was her. He then began to smirk. Karen then proceeded to call the owner of the property Morgan and her friend were occupying. She told the owner about the car and asked if he wanted towed. The owner okayed it. Brock then drove his truck over to the ladies in the car and introduced himself. They tried to explain that they were waiting for Morgan's boyfriend, but Brock insisted they weren't allowed to park there. They argued and called him every name in the book. Brock then hooked up their car and lifted it partially off the ground, forcing the two to exit the vehicle. They tore into him until he showed them the tow order. While this back and forth was going on, Ben arrived at the office and Morgan saw him walk in. She ran to the office door and Brock proceeded to lower the car. When Brock went back to the office, all hell had broken loose. Morgan apparently tried to snag the keys back from Ben, but he pocketed them. She began to hit him in his hurt arm and warned Ben that she'd call her friends to finish the job if she didn't get her keys back. Karen Jr. had already called the cops at this point and Brock got in between Ben and Morgan, even telling Morgan to try hitting him to find out what would happen. Morgan then tried to play the pity card and said she only wanted the keys to get her laptop out for school. Karen asked Ben to hand the keys over to Brock so he could grab the laptop. Brock retrieved the laptop from the car and, as he was handing it over, she rushed to aggressively grab it but knocked it from Brock's hand. Completely furious at this point, Morgan accused Brock of dropping the computer on purpose and she threatened to sue. The cops then arrived and Morgan began her sob story again, telling the police that they stole her car. The police questioned Karen and Karen gave her casual smirk while asking if they wanted to see the security footage. The police watched and listened as Morgan punched Karen several times and heard the threats she made about sending her friends after him. The police then turned to Morgan, who had turned ghost white at this point. She tried to back her way to the door, but the police stopped her. They proceeded to ask about the car, Ben's injuries, and who she planned on sending after him. She initially denied everything, but they already had evidence of her beating him up. He was arrested and Ben got his car back. After the cops left, Ben admitted he didn't want to be seen in a car that looked like it was advertising Pepto-Bismol and planned on trading it for a GTO. We later heard through the grapevine that 4 guys who beat up Ben were arrested. Morgan had ratted them out. Brock had a few more stories, but none of them were nearly as good as this one. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.